Let's see. First, I will ask, we're not doing the minutes? Okay, thanks. Ask, I'm assuming everybody had a chance to read the minutes, and I hope they did. Or are there any changes or corrections that were from the minutes? If not, may I have a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
It's been moved. Can I have a second? It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, please say aye. Nay? Abstentions? Okay, moving right along. All right, so let's go right in. Brittany.
Okay. All right. Today's agenda is filled with follow-up from the January 2025, 2 months ago, JJPOC recommendations that were moved out of the gender responsive work group, 2 out of the incarceration reentry subgroup. You'll see them on the screen. One is that was passed out of this committee, asked DCF to report or submit by March 1 to JJPOC on how many calls it receives of possible suspected child sexual abuse, including reports of abuse and neglect in out-of-home care settings, how many of those are substantiated, how many calls it receives of possible suspected child sexual abuse are referred to regional multidisciplinary teams, and any gaps in access to or capacity of the MDT system to meet the need. The remainder of the presentation will be followed by the Department of Corrections and then the judicial branch in response to the 2 reentry recommendations that were passed out of this committee in January. And those are in regards to transition supports and a list of vocational and employment programming and sort of an extensive report on how much is needed, what is the current need, what is sort of the gaps in being able to fulfill the need for young people in a variety of different, as noted on the screen, areas for reentry services. And so that first on the agenda is DCF.
So good afternoon, everyone. If point of privilege, I would just like to echo the remarks made about when the youth led this meeting last time. It was amazing, and I would really vote for that happening more frequently than not. It was just really heartwarming, and the way we should go about our business. So kudos to our youth that are here. We're listening, and we appreciate you. And to Tao for organizing that event. I left here full that day.
So can I say that you're putting in a motion that we do this at quarterly meeting?
Yeah. Can I make that motion?
I think we could.
What
make
she
a motion.
said. Yeah. let's
Yeah,
do that.
a quarterly event. And I will say on the behalf of the youth, we got to do better about the food, okay? Okay, just to be, I saw the faces. But I think we should do it quarterly because it keeps us focused.
That's right.
And
right.
it doesn't allow us to forget exactly why we come
right.
here. So put that in the minutes. Thank you.
Excellent. So, as requested, DCF is prepared to share data on our reports of sexual abuse. And I will say that we also are going to talk about the MDT process as requested, and we welcome input from you all as we are working to make sure that we are refining our processes to address any gaps that we may see. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our subject matter expert, who is Maribel Martinez, who will bring you the data as requested.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me? Nope.
Just got
Okay. My outside voice is still quiet. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the JJPOC membership.
Can everybody hear her?
No.
No. Yeah, would you go down front, please? And those microphones can reach better because it's important that we hear your report, please.
Okay.
Nope, keep going all the way down. Yeah, and any support staff that need to be with her, please feel free to join.
Thanks for your flexibility.
Oh, we always aim to please here, just so that everybody can hear what we're talking about
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to the JJPOC.
in the
committee.
microphone.
Now? Okay. Thank you, finally. So I'm Maribel Martinez. I'm the Senior Administrator over the Community and Clinical Consultation Division at DCF. And we oversee the human trafficking work for DCF as well as participate in the JJPOC subcommittees. And so we've got about 6 quick slides today to answer the questions regarding sexual abuse allegations at DCF. And so the first slide shows you, I just felt it was important to compare the number of total abuse and neglect allegations for the calendar year of 2024 versus the sexual abuse allegations reports received at the DCF care line for the same period of time. And so as you can see, the sexual abuse allegations were 1,893 reports that were received during the calendar year of 2024. And out of that, 1,495 were accepted reports. That meant that it met the criteria for accepting a report of abuse and neglect of a child with DCF. And that's about 5% of all accepted reports of abuse and neglect for DCF. The next slide, you'll see all the accepted reports with sexual abuse allegations. Again, the total was 1,495. In this pie chart, it separates those that are all meeting criteria for either having a parent or a caretaker or guardian as the alleged perpetrator. And then it also separates those that are about DCF licensed providers. And so it's broken to, there's 34 for the calendar year of 2024. And it is broken down by the type of DCF licensed provider. As you can see, DCF foster home and adoptive homes, there were 19 accepted reports of sexual abuse allegation. The next part of the pie is the total number of those reports about another provider. So that would be schools, daycare facilities, medical providers, and then there were 3 that were an unidentified type, but it was another type of provider. So as you can see, that was a total of 133. Please let me know if you have any questions.
I do.
Yes.
You're, you started out on this first page, and you have, and you focus just on the right-hand side about the 1,893 sexual abuse allegations, and then the substantiated or accepted, whatever,
Accepted.
1,495. But you didn't talk about what was on the left side where you have the 65,127.
So,
What are those?
so Senator Walker, Representative Walker.
Please, I am
sorry.
not a senator. Don't do that.
One-
Don't insult me. I didn't mean
Um,
that. I didn't mean that.
All the left-hand side are all the reports received at the DCF care line for the calendar year of 2024, regardless of the type of abuse and neglect allegation. That was 65,127.
Uh-huh.
Out of all of those, 30,318 were accepted reports. So it met criteria for accepting for either an investigation or assessment for our department.
Okay, and then of those, 1,893 were sexual.
Sexual abuse allegations.
Okay, all right. So then going into this page, the next page with the you have providers of 34 and 133. What is the big blue? The big blue.
That's
The 1,328.
1,328 are those reports accepted with a sexual abuse allegation where the alleged perpetrator is either the parent, caretaker, or guardian.
Okay, and the 34 providers there are the ones that took in those,
Oh, So one of the questions from JJPOC was how many sexual abuse reports did we receive related to a DCF licensed provider? And so we separated that from the large blue population, which is 1328. Those are parents and guardians. So if you look at the DCF licensed provider 34, that meant we received 34 reports for the calendar year of 2024 that was about a DCF licensed provider. So the alleged
Got it.
perpetrator was part of the DCF licensed provider.
Okay, all right, now,
Yeah.
any other questions? Yes. And Representative Senator?
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. In the first page, you talked about sexual abuse allegations being 1893 and accepted being 1495. Is there a difference in how many was accepted versus how many was actually confirmed?
Yeah, that'll be the next slide that we see.
Okay,
So we're looking at the numbers of reports we received, the numbers that were accepted, and now we're moving into the numbers that were substantiated,
okay,
which is confirmed.
all right. Thank you.
I'd just like to point out on that first slide, you see the proportion of reports that we made versus accepted. It's a little under half, right? But when you get to sexual abuse, you see the number of allegations versus the one we accept. So we almost investigate pretty much the overwhelming majority of the sexual abuse allegations that we get. So I just wanted to just point that out.
All right, go right ahead.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the substantiation. So these are out of that 1495. These are the reports that were
Come
substantiated.
closer to the mic.
Oh, out of the 1495, these were the reports that were substantiated for sexual abuse allegations. And in relation to those that are a DCF licensed provider and another provider, which is the questions that we were asked. As you can see, 24% of the 1495 of sexual abuse allegations were substantiated. So 24% of those reports were substantiated. Out of those, only 4 DCF licensed providers were substantiated, and 28 of other providers were substantiated. The remainder, which is, I believe, 338 or 91%, were substantiated on a parent, caretaker, or guardian. Any questions?
Yes.
there?
All right, thank you again. Do you have a chart that shows the actual accusation and then what ended up being the charge, and for the ones that weren't substantiated, something that shows why they weren't substantiated?
So I can tell you a little bit about how we accept and substantiate. So these are only the reports that have sexual abuse as the main allegation. So we're looking to confirm whether sexual abuse did indeed occur for this child, or about to this child. And so that was 368. The substantiation is that sexual abuse occurred.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
I was looking more of a, I guess like some kind of sheet that shows what was the actual, I mean, so you say 368 were substantiated. What was that charge that made that substantiation be confirmed versus all the others that were not confirmed, and why they were not confirmed?
So in those 368, sexual abuse was confirmed because the evidence during the investigation shows that we have confirmation that sexual abuse did occur for that child. And that would involve interviews, contact with providers involved with the family. It probably included law enforcement as well, partnering with us in that investigation. So those are the ones that we've determined that sexual abuse did occur for that child. That would be the charge or the allegation that was substantiated.
So they're all charged, so of those 368, they're all charged the same charge, or is there charges that are more severe than others?
No, in our system, it would show as sexual abuse. So the allegation was identified as sexual abuse, and that's the allegation that was confirmed.
I think you
It
might
could
be
be.
referring to the nature of the allegations, which could be anything from touching to intercourse. Is that what
Correct.
is that what you're
I see.
talking about?
I
Okay,
see.
so let me just,
Yeah, I can certainly research that, but I don't have that available right now.
Yeah, I just wondered if there was something that you kept, a document that showed that, that would be able to be shared at some point, just so we can see, what was determined to be that actual charge
Mhm.
in regards
But-
to that accusation, and then with those that were not, something that shows why they were not.
And, just to sort of piggyback on that, you stated that these are the cases that sexual abuse was the only charge. There were others that had,
The main.
that was the main charge.
Mhm.
So there were other cases of the 65,000 that sexual abuse could have been one of the multiple things in there. Is that correct?
We pulled the ones that had sexual abuse allegations apart from that. So the sexual abuse allegation may also have neglect. It may also have other
So they wouldn't show up on this,
allegations.
they wouldn't show up.
They
on-
would show up here because those are the same reports that were pulled. So the sexual abuse was the main allegation.
Okay, no, but it was a main allegation, but
Mm,
with some of the others with the 65, sexual abuse could be embedded in those too.
Not particularly because we pulled that out of the reports.
Okay.
I
So
think
yeah,
what
I
she's
still needed
saying
them.
is that what you have in front of you, if there are allegations of sexual abuse, they're
Those were
in
pulled in.
there, but it
Okay.
may not be the only thing
Okay.
that's there. So it could be sexual abuse and neglect,
Okay.
sexual abuse and physical abuse.
Okay.
I believe that's what you're
Yes.
communicating.
And
So-
on, okay, and
Got
on
it.
the schools, are those public or private?
Both. It would be both. So these again are reports that were called into the care line. So any school in the state of Connecticut that we would receive a report from would
Mhm.
be in that
Do
category.
you keep records of whether they're public or private?
I can check. I believe we do.
That would be
I can
also
check.
very, very helpful for us, I think, because I think we're seeing a lot of private institutions popping up in providing services for some, especially our special needs kids or our special ed kids. And it really is something that we are targeting. So it'd be something that we'd like to know about. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead. Any other questions? Okay.
Okay, next slide. So I'm going to turn the next two slides over to Crystal Rich from the Connecticut Children's Alliance.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Crystal Rich with the Connecticut Children's Alliance. We are the state's coalition for child advocacy centers and multidisciplinary teams. Just to give you a little context before I jump into the data, our state has 17 multidisciplinary teams that work to provide a comprehensive response to various forms of child abuse. So right now we see sexual abuse, severe physical abuse, human trafficking, and most recently we started to take on cases where children have been exposed to violence. Our 17 multidisciplinary teams are comprised of law enforcement, DCF, various providers, certainly our child advocacy center staff, prosecutors, specialized forensic interviewers, medical providers. They're all coordinated by our 10 child advocacy centers that are responsible for making sure that we provide those specialized forensic interviews. So interviews for kids where the interviewer themselves is specially trained so that the whole concept is that a child doesn't have to retell their story over and over again, and the investigators are able to watch that interview. We also provide advocacy, ongoing advocacy, clinical supports, and access to forensic medical exams. So the data you'll see in front of you, just to clarify, these are referrals that we receive from DCF. We do have other cases where we may receive referrals from law enforcement, sometimes our medical providers. So this is just highlighting the referrals that were directly came from DCF first of sexual abuse. So you'll see the DCF referrals for the 2024 calendar year are a little over 1,800. 1,410 of those were sexual abuse allegations. I do want to point out that it's been a great partnership in terms of we've worked really hard over the last 10 years or so to continuously increase the number of sexual abuse cases that are referred to MDTs. If you look back about 5-6 years ago, it was like 15% less than we're seeing now. So we're very, very close to the number that DCF substantiates or accepts rather. DCF referrals to MDTs for other forms of abuse or neglect. So those are things like physical abuse. We are doing a lot of work with the department around receiving referrals for human trafficking cases. So we see even cases that DCF does not accept for trafficking, we will receive those referrals via 737 from the department. You will see that for CAC services that were provided for those cases, that encompasses both the forensic interviews, referrals to the forensic medical exams, and then any on-site clinical or advocacy. This does not include advocacy or clinical services that are provided to other folks in the home. So caregivers, siblings, which is something we also will provide. And then other services, those are referrals that were made to outside services, specialized services that we may not have on site. Referrals, I'm just looking at the data points here. So like I mentioned, referrals to the teams can be made for anything around sexual abuse, human trafficking, severe physical abuse, child fatalities, though we don't really receive a lot of referrals around that, but that is what our statute outlines. Any questions on that before I move to the next slide?
Yes.
For the 1,291 under the CAC, you mentioned a couple different services, but are all of the 1,291 given a forensic evaluation, or some of that number get the forensic evaluation?
1,200 for that year for these referrals were given a forensic interview. Around 500 were given a forensic medical exam. All children are referred through our CACs for a forensic medical exam, but that's the number of families that accepted that medical exam and went through with it.
Yes.
In regards to your multidisciplinary teams, are those regional? How many different locations, or do they all come to that area in which they're needed?
Nope. So there are 17 of them
17.
across the state, yes.
Can you share a list of them?
Yeah.
Yep,
we can know the
absolutely.
locations, please?
So we have, and most of them, so most of our 17 multidisciplinary teams, with the exception of 2 areas, a lot of our CACs work with one multidisciplinary team. 2 of our child advocacy centers, the one based in New Haven and the one based in Hartford, work with multiple teams in that region. But I can share a list for you, absolutely.
So you have 17, but the bulk of them are based in Hartford and New Haven?
There's 6 that utilize the Child Advocacy
Mhm.
Center in Hartford, and there are 3 that utilize the Child Advocacy Center in New Haven. And then the other 8 across the state are one-to-one.
Do you have them on the eastern coast of Connecticut?
Do I have the list of?
Eastern coast, eastern side of Connecticut?
Yes, so we have full coverage across the
Okay,
state.
that's what I'm.
Every child in the state of Connecticut that fits within these protocols has access to one of our 17 teams and one of our 10 child advocacy centers.
Okay, when you say multidisciplinary, can you explain what does multidisciplinary mean?
Sure, absolutely. So what that means is that we have a variety of partners come together. So law enforcement, DCF, our medical providers, our forensic interviewers, our advocates, our mental health staff are all coming together to review cases in their jurisdiction. So if there's say a sexual abuse allegation that's reported to DCF, DCF accepts that report. It'll be, sent to the appropriate area office. That area office will then refer it to a multidisciplinary team in a child advocacy center. The law enforcement person in that jurisdiction is assigned to that case. Typically, DCF and law enforcement will start then at that point working collaboratively. They typically, if a forensic interview is warranted, and I'll get into a couple of situations in the next slide where that doesn't happen, but they'll go to collect together to that local CAC, do a forensic interview. That's when the family is provided all of those services. And then throughout the life of the case, that multidisciplinary team that comes together at least once a month for formal case reviews, but works together on a daily basis, will review cases, identify where there are gaps, making sure that there are services that are in place, and then working together again through the life of the case. So that's what we mean by multidisciplinary.
Are there criminal charges brought against the person who is perpetrating the abuse?
So it's on a case by case basis, but certainly that's something that our multidisciplinary teams work on. So law enforcement, is certainly the one in charge of that, but they work collaboratively with all of these other partners. That's really why this whole model was started. Actually, there are over 1,000 child advocacy centers across the country. It was started in the late 80s. And, we've been fortunate enough to, like I said, to have full coverage in the state. What's really nice about it is law enforcement and the other partners get to collaborate to make sure that there's nothing missing, right? Now, does that happen in every case? Absolutely not, right? There's still areas and gaps and things that we can do to improve the system, but that concept is to support each other's roles. So yes, we will follow cases all the way through prosecution if that case is brought to court.
And your program has been in operation in Connecticut for how long?
So our multidisciplinary teams have been in existence since around the late 80s. I want to say the legislation was first put into place in 88. Our child advocacy centers, each one is formed at a different time since then. So as the model was developed and we learned a lot about forensic interviews and the importance of having someone specially trained to interview kids, we started to see more of that. We became fully covered with child advocacy centers. So we had the 17 teams. And then we had, I think our 10th child advocacy center, I want to say, was in the early 2000s. We also, all of them go through 2 levels of accreditation, which I think is also important to point out. So in our state legislation, and it calls this out, all of them go through every 5 years a national accreditation that's based on national standards, which are reviewed and updated every 5 years. And then they are also reviewed every 3 years by the Governor's Task Force on Justice for Abused Children here in Connecticut to make sure that they are meeting our state standards as well.
So they're certified, or no, they're evaluated by, say, who again?
So they're evaluated every 5 years by
Right.
a national organization that comes out with these standards. They're
What-
called the
what-
National
what
Children's
type-
Alliance.
Oh, I'm sorry, what is the name of it?
National Children's Alliance.
Okay.
And then they're also evaluated by our state through the Governor's Task Force on Justice for Abused Children every 3 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I knew you were going to piggyback on that.
Just one question. You were asked about the criminal charges. Do you know the percentage of cases or relative to the number of referrals, the percent that actually result in charges being filed?
So when you were on the earlier slide, I thought to myself, I should have brought that statistic because I knew that was going to be asked. I can absolutely pull that for you. It's a little tricky because when we're looking at, and you all know this, right, a calendar year, sometimes the charges are filed the following calendar year. So our data report is not going to fully reflect everything, but I can certainly get those statistics for you.
I thought you started to say that there were areas and gaps that you might need improvement in.
Yeah, so the next slide, we have
gonna-
some gaps.
Okay. And as far as the charges that was just spoke about by the last question, you said it takes a year?
No, what I meant by that is depending on when the allegation comes in and the investigation starts and the work starts of the team, we may not see those charges right until the following report year. So it just may not all come out on, so the allegation, the numbers that you're seeing, these 1808 here, those, you're not going to see all of the charges or all of the prosecution show up on that year data, if that makes sense.
But the charges are implemented soon as it's found out, though.
If there's enough evidence, once they go through their investigation, then the police will, work on a warrant, then they have to bring that to their state's attorney's office, and then whether or not they decide to sign off on it based on the information in there.
Okay. Is a law enforcement on the multidisciplinary?
Yes,
team?
law enforcement are statutorily required to be on all of our MDTs.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So we would like to see the data on how many have gone to total prosecution. I think it's important. One, because it gives this process credibility with the community and the kids and things like that, because I'm sure a lot of children probably won't talk about it because of fear of retribution and everything. So I think it's important that we demonstrate that there is a follow-up and there is a completion that is focused on the protection of the child.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can pull that data and I can reach out to see what additional variables you would
Thank
like
you.
to see.
Go right ahead. You have one more slide.
Okay. So in terms of gaps, some of the gaps that we see, you'll see below, one of the things that we struggle with a little bit in our state is when this model was created, and this is true across the country, it was really focused on sexual abuse. It was created by a district attorney in Alabama, actually, who really worked on a lot of these cases. And so the model was made for that. But what we realized over time was this concept of collaborating, working together, having specialized services for children, really worked and is really something that we should be doing for other forms of violence that children experience. So again, and across the country, this is true too, but in Connecticut, we started opening up this process to human trafficking in 2014. The legislation was updated to make sure that any child trafficking case was referred to our multidisciplinary teams. We have always, for the most part, seen severe physical abuse. So there are some barriers with that in terms of how we define that across our state. There's variability from department or agency in terms of what severe physical abuse means or looks like. The resources that were initially developed by the state to pay for the forensic interviews and the forensic medical exams were initially made for sexual abuse. Those reimbursements come from the Office of Victim Services and fall out of the same pot that the sexual assault forensic exam kits come out of. That has never been updated, so that it doesn't allow us to get reimbursed for those forensic interviews that are for other types of violence. So that's been a barrier across our state. I do think we would be able to see more of those cases and accept that if that barrier wasn't there. The other barrier that we have here is just we've seen an increase in cases over the years. The need for more robust advocacy and clinical services within our CACs has been something that we've seen as well. And the state funding hasn't increased for over the last 15 years. The other piece is the need for standardized referrals. So our legislation, the process is outlined in 17A-106B. And one of the things that's not in there, so the referral to a child advocacy center is a may. So for some of our folks, it is looked at as an optional piece, especially when you get, new disciplines, new members that come to the teams. They look at it as something optional versus this is really what we should do for our state. So those are some areas that we really need to, see some improvements in. I think some of the other barriers that we see is just across the board. Data definitions, how we collect data, how we define things, some lack of standardized tools in terms of assessments, lack of some specialized services or resources for specialized populations. But those are some of the barriers that we see within our system. And this information is based, so we have a pretty robust outcome measurement system. So what that is a collection of several surveys that go out to all of our caregivers. So when a caregiver initially comes for their first visit with their child to our child advocacy center, we ask them, they get access to these surveys. There's one for youth when it's appropriate. We do one for all of our multidisciplinary team partners twice a year as well. And then this is also based on some of the community assessments that are a requirement of all of our CACs. Any questions?
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Senator Nolan? Mhm. Yeah, she demoted.
I'm sorry, but, just in regards to the lack of resources for, the reimbursement for forensic interviews and the need of additional resources to support CAC advocacy. Is that something that was submitted in regards for us to know that there's more funding needed for that area? Because I
So
don't
we did
remember-
submit on our own because of all of the federal cuts that are coming, a request for some funding, but that would really just cover some of the cuts that are coming federally. We have not, we've started to have conversations with the Office of Victim Services, and they're aware around the difficulty with the forensic interview reimbursement, but it is something that we'd have to have a larger discussion about because it's simply where it's placed in legislation, that it's within all of the requirements or reimbursements for sexual abuse.
So is that more federal funding or is that state
No,
funding?
state.
That's state or a mix, I think,
It's
right?
state.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Christine?
I just want to go back for just a second in terms of the sexual abuse allegation. Can you just clarify, is that including cases that are called in specifically as human trafficking, suspected human trafficking?
Good question.
I believe so. I can now I'm thinking about it. I believe so. but I can double check that, Christina.
Any more questions?
Just one.
Yes.
When we talk about the gap of standardized referrals to the MDTs, do you think if there was a more standardized referral process across the state, would we see, or is it possible we would see an increase of the substantiation rate?
I think that's hard to say, but I do think that we know when there's a coordination, right? When there's more coordination, when there's more services in place, I would like to say yes. I do think that there would be that increase. And I think standardizing those referrals across the state would require us as a state to say, this is the mandated process. But we do know that, and there's a lot of research to show that there are much better outcomes for kids in general, regardless of whether something goes through an investigation, that there are better outcomes for kids when we apply that multidisciplinary approach.
Any other questions? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
very, very much. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. I'm glad that, I would hope that we get some updates on this on a pretty regular basis, just so that we know what's going on, how many cases, things like that. So that
Absolutely.
we understand, because as we all know, this is a very important area that we've all been talking about for a while. So, Commissioner?
No, we appreciate it. There's a lot that has evolved over the years, and I think that there's a lot of things that we need to look at in terms of the system. And so we're happy to come back to answer some of the questions that were asked, including, I think we all have an assumption that we understand what we mean by human trafficking versus sexual abuse. And so we want to make sure that we are all clear on the definitions and how we respond to them.
I think that's very true, and I appreciate. Plus, I really do want to understand substantiation percentages, because that gives it a lot more clarity for the public. And I think that's got to say that we are focusing on this, and we mean to follow up on it and protect our kids.
Also, just for the record, I do want to say that while law enforcement and DCF may be doing a concurrent investigation, the thresholds for substantiation versus arrest could be slightly different. So there are nuances in the process that I think would be good for everyone to hear as
Yeah.
well.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Next, we have the Department of Corrections. Okay, do you have inside voices or outside voices?
I believe we have outside voices.
Oh, good.
Good afternoon, Michael Pierce. I'm currently the warden at Manson Youth. I would like to start off and thank everyone, especially Ms. Chair, Mr. Karpowitz. Last month was a first time for me since I've been at Manson, where the young men under our care have been given the opportunity to have their voices heard. I think it's great that we have the young men and women here. To me, they not only represent themselves, but they also represent the young men that are under our care. It's great to hear those post-incarceration that have been through the system, that can talk about what has worked for them and what has not. Again, it was the first time for those under our care to have their voices heard. There's lots of red tape that prevents us from being able to allow them the ability to be heard. So I'd like to say thank you from myself and from the young men as well. Hoping for lots of opportunities like that in the future. It's great to have Ms. Montanez. She comes in often. Christina Karantowitz, CTJA, and as well as CCA, Ms. Egan paid us a visit yesterday. Again, it's great to have their voices heard while they're there, but it's another thing to have their voices heard on a forum as large as this. I'd just like for it to continue.
We will. Thank you.
Oh, excuse me. I do have a card for them. So each of them did send you guys a card. We can pass it around the room. So to start off, one says, thank you for allowing us to speak and then allowing us to be heard. Another says, thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak and feel needed. This experience made me open my eyes to see there are people out there willing to help the youth. Thank you for making me feel heard and giving me the support system I didn't know I had. Also, thank you for this opportunity and for letting me and us speak our mind. Thank you.
Just one second, Mr. Karpowitz.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank you, Warden Pierce, and please send our thanks and recognition back to the men who wrote and had their words conveyed to us by you today, and just to acknowledge just how profoundly well it reflects on the department and Manson to have made that happen. We understand the obstacles of that, and I just want to tell you how grateful we are for that.
We'll certainly relay that message. We spoke about food here. We know that they can't be paid monetarily, but they did express that if they can't get stuffed shrimp, they will settle for pizza and wings.
We will work on that. You know that? I love it. I love it. Go right to the food. Go right ahead, sir. You have the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Deputy Warden Tammy Peralt at Manson Youth Institution. Just wanted to talk about, just go over the recommendations and what we are doing currently. Our current population at MYI is 296. We have 258 young men that are 18 and over, and then we have 38 youth. 2 of them are 15, 10 16-year-olds, and we have 26 17-year-olds. So I'll just focus on the youth. Currently, we have 33 accused youth, and we have 5 sentenced youth. And I did check, all of those 5 sentenced youth are sentenced to, have a term of probation after they complete their sentences. So with regard to recommendation number 1, we created some surveys to survey the youth as well as their families regarding the 3 areas in question. We first surveyed the youth, and with the 3 questions regarding support around transportation to have visits at MYI, the youth indicated 14 of the youth indicated that they thought that that would be helpful, as did 16 of the family members. 16 of the family members indicated that Uber and Lyft cards would be helpful. 7 of those 16 also indicated gas cards could be helpful, as they can give it to another family member who can then provide the transportation. We had 12 family members indicate that support or benefits around support for 6 months after the youth's release indicated that all the services would be helpful. Priority in with the Department of Housing for housing would be helpful. 4 indicated grocery assistance, employment support, a couple just rental assistance, for 6 months, and a couple indicated that they would like vocational training, that would be helpful. We also spoke to them, surveyed them about the need for funds around relocating for safety reasons. 12 of the youth and 19 of the families out of the 38 indicated that they would benefit from them type of service or funding. 18 said that they would need all the services, and 1 family indicated maybe just some help with utilities. We did get results from 26 of the 36 families. The survey questions to kind of support and inform us on a continued basis. We included the survey questions in our MYI reentry intake assessment, and also we will include the questions in our family engagement meetings that we do weekly, and we shared the questions with York to get, some information related to those girls. They currently, I believe, have 1 girl. The next slide.
Could I ask a
Yeah.
question right here?
Yeah.
I love the questions, but I need you to support the information about this. And what do I mean? Tell us how important it is for these kids to reconnect. Tell us how important it is for them to see their family. Explain why it's important. Could you share that, please?
Absolutely. So during the surveys, I'll just speak first with the youth. I'll say most of them were happy with the amount of visits they were getting. Some of them actually didn't want any visits. Some indicated that they didn't want visits because they, A, didn't want their family members to see them in that environment. They did not want to burden their families with coming to MYI. And some did indicate that they had like maybe a grandma that would like to visit but cannot. But we also had another good number, unfortunately, of young men who said that they didn't want them to visit because they felt very sad when, mom, for example, was leaving. They were staying there and the visitor was leaving without them. They also indicated that they really don't like to hear about outside life, that outside life has continued on without them. So there was, of course, the support is tremendously important, whether it's someone facing their incarceration, they don't, it's the support for their mental health and their connections to their communities are very important. But I mean, there are certainly barriers and it's different for every kid. We do, though, like I said, see the trends. I would say that the connection to their families are extremely important throughout their period of incarceration, whether it be 3 months while they're accused and wanting to bond out, or they get a PTA, or if they, in turn are sentenced for 5 years. It's very important to maintain those family connections, whether it be with their parents, their siblings. It kind of makes the transition or the reentry a little smoother if they continue to feel comfortable in communication with their family and feel as though their family is still there with them, though not at MYI, but there with them, able to talk to them. And that is actually, kind of side note, with regard to the tablets. Those free phone calls every month, every week, every day are extremely important. And it's, the youth are concerned about those phone calls, the free phone calls. They've heard about it, they're informed, and they are very concerned because they don't feel as though their families can afford those phone calls as much as they get them now.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Thank you.
The importance of reconnecting them back, because this is should not be perceived as permanent.
Mm-hmm.
It is temporary. And so the more we continually connect them back into society, the better they're going to go in that focus. And we should be providing them more opportunities to have that connection, whether it be the phones. And appropriations heard you, trust me, we got you back there. And I mean, every single member of the committee has voted to make sure that those get taken care of. And that makes us understand that they're hearing too. So I want to give you that much credit. But I think that's important for us to also hear, and the people that are listening to us. Why do we do this? We talk about what we're doing, but we got to connect that why, because everybody doesn't understand that why. And that's what we should be doing. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Yeah. Daniel? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm names first. I'm good. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you for all of that again. Just wanted to reiterate that. So one thing that I would love to hear discussed either at this occasion now or the next time, we can host you here, is a little bit further in that same direction that you're opening for us, which is the movement of these young people through time. Like if we think about your 300 right now, where are they, how long are they with you, and where are they going next? And so what I'm trying to help us get to, which I think is mutually reinforcing to the exchange, the conversation we're having, right? Okay. Release to the community from your into supervision from your custody.
Yes.
Aging out to fellow institutions inside the DOC, and if so, typically for how long? You've touched on these points for us, but I would love the next time we meet here to be able to see what does it look like, who's going where in a typical 12-month period of time for you all.
Sure.
To give us the human dimension that you're trying to share with us of your work, because that's what it's about. As the representative said, for those of us on the outside looking in, all we see is these reports of a snapshot. That's really a self-portrait of ourselves. We don't need that anymore. We need to know where the young people you're working with you know they're going to, right? And so I just would welcome that. If you can share a little bit, just pause for a moment to tell us a little bit more about that today, or maybe preferably if you want, next time we have you here to bring that into light a little bit more. These kids are all on a journey through their time with you to somewhere else. And I think if we can bring that to the foreground, I think that'd be a very helpful step to support you all in what you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I believe that I think the next slide will speak to a little bit of what you just asked. Yes. So I looked back at 2024 to really get a good snapshot. At MYI in 2024, we had 103 youth admitted. 45 were discharged unsentenced to bond or discharged from court. So it was 45. We had 13 youth sentenced and discharged, either discharged end of sentence, excuse me, or to transitional supervision. I confirm that all 13 of those young men were discharged not only to transitional supervision and also to a term of probation. Of those 13, 2 have been reincarcerated either as a violation of probation, and the other young man is facing new criminal charges. So 2 of the 13. 45 of the youth that were admitted transitioned out of our youth population and into our adult population. Currently, we have the 5 sentenced youth, as I spoke of earlier. 2 of those youth will be 17 years old at their age of discharge and at their time of discharge, and the other 3 will be adults. They are serving, I believe, sentenced to about 5 years. So they, and both of those youth families, by the way, did decline the need for these services. Some of the families indicated that some of these families that were surveyed, they did indicate that they needed the flex funds. They would be beneficial. So I would say, I mean, with the exception of the 13, we have about half and half are either aging out into our adult population or they're being discharged directly from court, which is a barrier to potentially providing these services. We kind of were brainstorming and thinking that for even if the services were extended to the youth that are accused, then we could create a form, have a point of contact, and then we could make referrals, whether it be through judicial, we could, provide those services. We also discussed possibly a transitional living program, and 10 of the youth indicated that they were interested. And 20 of the surveyed youth indicated that they had future plans for moving, though not now, just it was sort of a future wish or goal. Let's see, I think.
So there were several takeaways, but there's one that was very glaring to me. Discharged from court without notice or time to plan.
Mhm.
These are children, right?
Yes.
Hmm.
I mean, their attorneys are where, their attorneys are defending them, and whether they're discharged to bond or discharged to their parents' care on a PTA or DCF care on a PTA. But we are not informed, in advance. Typically, it's all done in judicial.
When you mean it's all done in judicial?
During the course of their criminal case, not the trial, but their criminal case proceedings, the attorneys work on perhaps getting a promise to appear or a bond out. We also have a large number of youth that get bonded out under the court GPS. So they need to go to court to bond out, as they will have like an ankle monitor. placed on their ankles.
Mhm.
So they directly go to court. They don't discharge from MYI.
Judge, you want to explain that one to me?
Yeah, it could, so they're transferred to court, meet with their lawyer, prosecutor, they work something out where the person's released, whether it's reducing a bond and discharge to a program or GPS. But it could be something when on their way to court, they don't realize that that's gonna be
A possible,
what's possible that day.
and if they're a child, they can just be released right there? Without adult or anything?
I would say likely.
Madam Representative?
We got a lot of conversation there. Wait,
Madam Representative, if I can.
yes, yes.
Yes, right, when they leave the facility in the morning, they might not always know what's gonna happen at that court appearance. And so it's possible that that could be the appearance where they're released, whether it's to home or to a program, there may be a bed that opened up. But in the juvenile court setting, there's always a parent or caregiver, or there should be a parent or caregiver present for the hearing. So it's not like, it's not like they're just released to the corner of Broad Street with a bus pass and told to like get to their next
What if
stop.
they have a
Like,
bus
there-
pass?
there is someone there. And then they also have juvenile probation officers generally, especially if a kid is detained in like a pretrial position or coming up on end of sentence. There's someone there to ensure that there's coordination.
There is coordination.
There is coordination.
And it's,
They don't always know what's going to happen at the hearing when they leave the facility, DOC facility, but there is a responsible adult and coordination occurring at the courthouse.
okay. Questions? There was, oh, down, yes. Mhm.
Hi, Renee Smirnov from the Office of the Chief Public Defender. So being a public defender in juvenile and adult court, it is a little bit of a different situation. In juvenile court, correct. The juvenile probation, if the child's being released back to juvenile, there is a whole system there. In adult court, my experience has been the adult court judges will not release the child unless a parent or if DCF is the guardian is present, signing all the documents, signing the PTA. So there's usually we have short notice, but I know from the public defender's point of view, especially if we have social workers, our main objective is to get that child out of being incarcerated. And we will come up with a plan. Sometimes the plan is they're going to sit in our office until our social worker can meet with the parents, try to set up the school system. But we really, from our office point of view, we have a holistic representation. And our number one defense is get them out of jail as quickly as possible.
I guess the disconnect is giving the information to DOC so that they know that the child is already, so there's a need for a communication just to send some sort of communication that the child is now being placed in. So, because it did sound like they were just like putting them on Broad Street with a bus pass. And like I said, but they're children. So thank you. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. And with this, in doing the survey and where we're looking at our population and the larger number that do age out to our adult population, our 18 and over population, I mean, for me, the question needs to be asked, would the services be extended to the 18 and over population? Because they were admitted as youth, would these services be offered to those young men as well?
I'm sorry, what services?
So the transitional supports
Mhm,
and the vocational supports.
mhm.
I mean, really, I would say more the transitional supports for the support with housing, support with relocating costs, support around relocating costs for safety. You know, if they were 16 when they came in, they get sentenced, they now turn 18. Will the services still be offered to that youth at 18 and a half when they're leaving?
They are age delivery. Yeah.
So that
Mhm.
that might make it, you know, a little bit different in terms of funding. It would extend it. Next slide, please. So meeting the needs currently, we have a fabulous new reentry counselor. He completes surveys to identify their reentry needs upon intake. He also we also incorporating, as I said earlier, these questions in our family engagement meetings and shared the surveys with the folks over at York. Ideally, we would be in communication and coordination with probation and with the Connecticut Judicial Branch. For example, if a youth said, I'm gonna need housing, we would know that in advance, someone is sentenced, and then we can send over a referral or information form to their probation officer. And we could potentially also have identified a point of contact in each courthouse if the person was accused and these services were identified as needed for a particular youth. We also would coordinate and make referrals to DCF, the Department of Housing, the Department of Labor, just pretty much as needed if the youth identify whatever their needs are, and we would make referrals accordingly. We do have a really great partnership with the JJEU, and they support those youth in transition back out to the communities with their school. And in terms of housing and the other, additional life supports, we have a couple of programs in the state with DOMIS. We have Our Piece of the Pie. Then, of course, we also have the Reentry Welcome Centers and 211 in some cases. In 2024, we did not have any youth that were being released to homelessness, but in 2023 we did, and DCF took them into their care and supported them with their housing and other needs. Any questions on that slide? So with that, with recommendation number 2, I'll turn it over to, for the vocational employment support, I'll turn it over to Council Supervisor Jelena Sean.
Good afternoon, everyone. Do I have an outside voice? Everyone hear me? First, I have to echo the young people that were here the last month. I was the supervisor with the young men that we had, and it was a great experience, not just to be sitting there next to them and how they viewed themselves. It was empowering, and for them to realize that they do have a voice. It was definitely encouraging. So they do hope that you will invite them back. They did ask for shrimp and pizza and wings. So you can work on that. And I do want to say that they felt valued, and that's something that you can't give them. Like, we could teach them and encourage them all the time, but in that moment, in that space, they felt valued. So that's the impact that you guys made. So I hope that we can continue it. So I'm going to just quickly go over our reentry. We also believe in seeing them go back into the community. It's a constant conversation for us. We know that this part of their lives is not their only contribution to society. We are excited about the things that they will do in the future. So that's what we're working on. We constantly talk about future goals. So regarding recommendation 2 for vocational and employment support, we have reentry intake service assessment services, surveys. We complete them upon intake for the accused and the sentenced for all of our population. We do have we're going to keep saying it, a great reentry counselor. He does great work. He understands the need as well. If you wanted to take a look at the assessments, they are in the back 2 slides. We do have a partnership with Northwest Regional Workforce Investment Board and the Justice Ed Center. We use VR goggles for learning. We currently have 31 youth that take part of that program. A lot of the programs that they explored or the highest number were CDL, truck driving. They loved the airframe. They loved the EMT paramedic. Oddly enough, they loved working on the knee. That was part of a career exploration. And a lot of them liked working on the knee. That was pretty fascinating to me. And I was really proud of them. We also have what we call MYI Connections. If you also look in the back of the slide, you'll see it's a pamphlet where we kind of give them resources. You're leaving us, what can we do to help make sure that you don't come back? So we have provided different resources in the area. There is a scan code, so they can scan it and they can find out what services they need in Hartford or Bridgeport, New Haven. We have an email they can contact us. Hey, I'm trying to get some work boots, or I might need employment, or this is happening. We actually had a young man reach out to us when he was like, I need therapy.
And that was like, this is exactly why we have this email. They have emailed us and let us know that they've got their own ID or when they get a job. So that's always promising to hear. But we want to establish that that we are their village too. We don't want them to come back to let us know how they're doing. They could just email us and let us know how they're doing. But we are there to support them in their success. Some of our reentry discharge planning includes the ID procurement. We are identifying and addressing the areas of need for housing, again, mental health, medical, education, vocation, that's important. Insurance coverage, we want to make sure that they're informed of community-based resources. We also are starting, we had a job center about 10 years ago, roughly. We are working to revamp that and relaunch that at our facility. So they'll have computer access so they can learn online application. We do recognize the needs that these young men will face. Some of the needs are medical, insurance, transportation will be a need for them. The transportation support, they're going to need bus passes, housing. Some of them, they don't want to return back to their own neighborhoods. So we want to make sure that we're supporting those things. Some of our reentry services that we do with our reentry group is we do a lot of mock interviewing. Again, with our application process, learning employment, interview skills, something that we might take for granted in their learning. We have done resume building, life skills. We've done how to tie a tie. I don't know how many of you know how to tie ties, but that is a skill that you have to learn. So we're very proud of them. They continue to do that. Some of the barriers that we recognize for them, that we don't have a driver's license on-site testing area for them. So if they can get their driver's license, we don't have an on-site testing. They would have to, how do they navigate getting their license? Especially if this is an experience they've never endured or they don't have the support system at home to help them. Remember, some of them are driving without the license. We want to make sure that they're not doing that again. Currently, we had 5 VR goggles. We now only have 1. The Justice Ed actually needed their 4 back, so we only have 1 VR goggle that they enjoyed. They are kind of costly, but we are hoping that you hear us loud and clear. Some of our students struggle with VR learning, so we understand that. We work with the education department to understand where they're getting stuck at. Maybe it's a learning disability or frustration, but it's a part of VR goggles. And we just want to make sure that this career exploration, it's getting them excited. It's encouraging them to understand that they have options. That's what they need to know, that they do have options. And it's something that we want to be able to, we're encouraging them. Anything else? Do you have any questions?
We have another presentation right behind you, so we asked a lot of questions. Sorry, go ahead.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm Matt Rink. I'm the principal here at Manston Youth Institution. And so thanks for having us. We appreciate it. So first off, there's really a couple levels of ways that we support transition for our community. And the first one is for all of our students. And then our second level would be more for our special education population. However, our school is a high majority special education, so there's a tremendous amount of overlap between the services. So every student that's under 18 is going to be going into the high school program unless they're signed out of it by their parents. And during the high school program, they're all going to be exposed to some career and technical education classes. So currently, they go through one class at a time for a duration, maybe 8-9 months, and then they'll move on to the next vocation or CTE class. So currently, they're in graphic arts, where they sit at Mac computers and learn how to graphically manipulate everything, making posters, and it moves also beyond that into actual printing technology. So they're getting computer skills and they're also getting the skills of a trade. a legitimate trade, which actually most people are aging out of in Connecticut, and which will become a much higher stakes, higher demand trade in the future. When we get through graphic arts, we're going to cycle them through culinary arts, which has its own inherent benefits. But one of them is a Serve Safe certificate, which is a certificate that is nationally known. It can be utilized out in the community. And I know anecdotally some people that said that they received a $1 raise upon taking the job simply because they had their Serve Safe certificate already. The next two CTEs that they would cycle through would be either auto body repair or auto technology, which is more the nuts and bolts of the car. And I think what we're really looking to do here is twofold. One, allow them to explore a few different career possibilities. And also, we want to get their life skills up also. Every one of their vocations can improve their life skills and hopefully their potential outcomes. And beyond ServSafe, there is another certificate or credential that is given, and that is OSHA 10. OSHA 10 will be given when our students cycle through culinary arts or their auto body or auto technology classes. OSHA 10, very similar to ServSafe, is another one of those credentials that a potential employer does not have to provide for those students, which makes them more marketable, more hireable. That's certainly what we're looking for. So the next theme I would say that we're looking to do in our district with the help of our vocational coordinator is we're trying to get more and more of our credentials in the community that mean something. All of our CTE courses give achievement certificates, completion certificates. However, we're trying to move further and further into nationally recognized certificates and credentials. And so the next one we're hoping to do is called iCar, I believe, which is for auto body, which is nationally recognized. So our voc coordinator is doing a great job moving us forward there. Even more exciting is the work that's being done with her and the CT State college system. So there's a strong initiative to get all of our CTE courses we call it dual enrollment. Essentially, we want them to not only get a high school credit and a certificate of completion, but we would also like them to get a college credit or a post high school credit while they're at it. It's not a quick process, but it's a process that we're moving forward in earnest. We also, thankfully, because we've recently hired two what we call correctional transition instructors. And what they do is essentially they act slightly as a substitute, but I don't really mean it in that sense. And let me explain. If we have a teacher who's unable to come to work and teach that day for whatever the reason may be, they will be a CTI, that's the abbreviation for it, will come into that class and provide them with the same quantity of hours of education. However, it'll all be transition related. So that could span a whole bunch of topics such as, wardrobe choices, email etiquette, phone etiquette, interviewing skills, and the list goes on and on and on. So we're hoping to really embed our students with strong transitional instruction, which actually doesn't take up a subject matter slot in the schedule because they plug in anywhere a teacher cannot make it into class or school that day, or is it a PD? Secondly, I'd say we're really moving forward on interagency collaborations for transition. The JJEU, who's now mentioned a second time with good reason, and that is because they literally get a report of what students of ours are leaving the facility and set up their education moving forward outside of the prison system. So they may act as a liaison with the school that they're hoping to return to. They may help procure those records for that school, may even take part in PPT meetings and also involve us so that they're a perfect bridge between us in the outside world, and we expect that partnership to continue. Besides that, we have begun a partnership about a year ago with the Bureau of Rehabilitation Services. They're going to follow some of our students with disabilities to try to help them get employment and help them with employment, like a resource or job coach or whatever supports they need to be successful in that job. We recently hosted a community resource event, which basically involved workforce development boards, career resources, which is another nonprofit workplace company, if you will. So, you know, they're really a jack of all trades resource for people entering the workforce, especially re-entering the workforce. So that went well. We're trying to give all of our students an idea of what resources they have to utilize when they leave incarceration. And then we can go to the next slide, and then I'll answer any questions. They're both very similar and closely related.
I'm going to jump in real quick right here.
Yep.
I'm going to ask Undersecretary Karpowitz to start. Go ahead.
Sure, thanks, Chair. So I think in the interest of the importance of this
Mhm.
set of topics and the rest of the agenda that I think we need to cover here at the committee today, we may see if we can work with you and your schedules to invite you back to continue this conversation. And is that correct? That we would like to do that, and so we would like to, and that understanding that it's a challenge to get here and join us in person and force, and so we will work with you to reschedule that. And one thing I would like to turn up the heat on myself and others at OPM, and perhaps at the legislature, by having you make clear to us what we as a community need to do in order to be on the other side of the work you're doing for the 12 months after these young people leave you, right? And so you're doing everything you can while they're with you. In my experience, we have very poor sightlines. And when I say we, I mean our executive branch, but you and me. Very poor sightlines on where they go next. And what can you do to tell us what we need to do to know where all these young people 6, 12, 18 months later? We do vocational training, but do they have a job? We're setting them up with the best special education we can. When they leave you, are they completing a credential? We don't give you sightlines, and so I want to partner with you. You can't do what you don't see and don't have. And so I'm working on that at OPM, but I would just like, so for the schedule, we will continue this presentation, and maybe in the interim, you can help us and me on our branch in particular. How do we get ourselves as a community sightlines? We all want to know where your kids go a year later, and that whether they're at McDougal or whether they're back home. I think we all want those sightlines. So please lean on me for that, and we'll partner together as we go forward.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I think probably that last meeting that we had with our kids gave us a whole different perspective of what we really should be focusing on. And we need to bring it more to what they're going to be seeing and what they're going to be doing a little bit clearer. And I mean, it's good to know that these are there and everything, but we got to see it from their vision. And if it's going to be beneficial and we're going to go, I think we don't want to just go through it and do this. I think it's important that we change that scope. Just no criticism. It's just, I think we all felt it, and that's where we'd like to go. So if not, we pause and we'll come back next month. Is that okay? All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Next, you guys got about 15, 20 minutes. So CSSD, they thought they were off. I know Kathy can talk fast, so yeah. Turn that on. And who are you?
Yes, so I'm Kathy Foley-Geib. I'm the Director of Juvenile Residential Services at the Court Support and Services Division of the Judicial Branch. Thank you for the opportunity today to speak on our reentry supports, both the availability of those supports and also additional needs that we have for our population. I just want to start by saying that What my colleagues at DOC have shared about the youth at MYI is very much similar to what the youth that we're dealing with in the juvenile system, particularly at our Regions programs, experience as well. So in a lot of ways, they're the same kids that had very similar experiences, have very similar, not identical, but similar experiences in the court system as well. So, I don't want anyone to think there's a big distinction between those two populations because the needs are very similar. So just in terms of the interest of time, I'll run through things very quickly. There is a report, there is a report that was also submitted. So everyone has that report. They would have received it via email. And the information that we presented today is also in that report. Okay. So first I want to speak about transition support. There was a question about how many youth are being served. And for calendar year 2024, we had 245 youth who were served by one of our 9 juvenile residential treatment programs. So 39 of those youth had been in one of the programs, but discharged to the community and were still working with their reintegration mentor. But 206 youth were in a residential bed during that calendar year. Of the 206, 92% were discharged to community supervision and 8% were discharged at the end of their sentence. About half of the population was served in our Regions programs. Length of stay is typically 6 to 9 months. And then just over a third of the population was served at our shortest length of stay program, the Community Diversion and Respite Center. In terms of needs, 140 families or 57% of the population received some sort of support with transportation for visitation purposes. Another 73% or 179 families received support from what we call a reintegration mentor, who works with the child and the family for 12 months after the child's return to the community. So they would have started working with the child from day 1 of admission through that whole period of residential treatment, and then continued for another year in the community supporting that child and trying to make sure they're connected to what they need and that they're staying on the proper path. And then there was 22 families who received support to relocate for safety reasons. There was concerns about their child's welfare, remaining in their neighborhood, and made the choice to relocate. Okay. There were 58 youth and their families, or about 24%, who didn't get all the assistance that they needed. For the most part, that was due to not having reintegration mentors at our state-operated Regions programs, which are located in Bridgeport and Hartford. We just do not have the funding for that service right now. They also did not get the benefit of what we call family support specialists, who work specifically with the caregiver and family around what it is that they need, and then helping with that transition back home. 22 of the youth didn't complete the program that they were in for a number of different reasons. Either for the staff secure, they eloped, or they might have needed a higher level of care. That would have been a very small number of kids, maybe 1 or 2. And some would return to detention because of multiple program violations. 7 youth and their families were partially served, meaning that they were able to have some of their needs met, but not all of them. 4 of the youth would have liked to have done a very specific vocational program, and then 3 families needed assistance with paying back rent or past utility bills, but we did not have the funding available. So that was a look at the data for that population of 245 youth who were served in 2024. This slide here is specific to the youth who are currently in one of our residential programs. They and their families were interviewed as part of this process. 63 families out of the 68 agreed to participate. The next 2 slides will talk, or several slides will talk about what they identified their needs being. Majority said that they would appreciate or use transportation assistance to visit their child. 59% say they would benefit from Uber or Lyft gift cards, and another 24% said that they would use bus passes or gas cards to visit their child twice a month. And as my colleagues at DOC were saying, that family visitation, some children, prefer doing phone calls with their family, but most of the youth in the treatment programs do appreciate having their family visits. And it is critical for the family treatment component for the parents to be able to come to campus and participate in that work. And all of the research literature will show that the outcomes are better for youth who are connected with their family, whose families participate in treatment, and have a better transition back to the community. 50 families or 79% reported having additional needs. So 51% indicated that they needed support with groceries and food. 32% need assistance with paying their past utility bills. 46% need help with transportation, getting either themselves or their children to outpatient services. And another 41% also have needs getting to their job, or if their child does have a job, getting them to that job. They also need assistance with bedroom furniture. Some of the kids do go home and they do not have a bed, they do not have a dresser. And I can appreciate, that can be a bit alarming, but it is very true. It's not uncommon for the kids that we're serving. 57% need assistance with purchasing clothes for their kids. We work hard to make sure that every child is returning back to their community with proper clothing for the time of year, from basics of in terms of underwear and socks to having a couple of outfits to be able to get to school and be out looking for work. 37% need assistance with rental or with rent. 49% need assistance with vocational training, and then another 10 families had indicated that they needed support with relocation. In terms of barriers and considerations and opportunities, the families that we work with, are presented with a variety of challenges, multiple stressors day to day. Particularly predominantly poverty and low income really impacts them severely. Living in disenfranchised and chaotic neighborhoods with struggling schools, and having limited time really contributes to that struggle, whether it's because they're working multiple jobs or have other children to care for or other family members, or getting from one place to the other because they don't have transportation is very time consuming because they have to take multiple buses. Every child has someone who is there to work with them around their basic needs. Depending on the program, it may be a different individual, but it will either be a case manager, a probation officer, or a reintegration mentor. The vision for the Connecticut Justice Evolved Medicaid waiver plan really is intended to be able to fund these kind of supports that are necessary. Given the current fiscal environment at the federal level, it's not clear if that will come through or not. But if it does, then that would certainly go a long way of addressing all these needs.
Very diplomatic.
So we've identified 5 strategies to help meet these unmet needs based on what the families are saying and what the data is telling us. Ideally, we'd have those reintegration mentors and family support specialists for the youth who are being served at Bridgeport and Hartford. We'd be able to provide approximately 100 youth and their families transportation funds to have visitation at least twice a month. Another 50 youth transportation support to get them to and from appointments back in the community, to and from work or school. Another 110 youth would benefit from additional support with flex funds, whether that's food or clothing, back rent of, or utilities or furniture. And then we've identified about 10 families a year who would benefit from being able to relocate and who would take us up on that offer for safety reasons. Okay. In terms of vocational employment support, one of the questions that was posed was, who knows if the child's involved in job-related activities when they're being discharged, and are they employed or connected to a vocational program? So depending on the program, it may be a different individual, but every child has at least 2 people who knows the answers to every one of those questions, actually 3, because they all have a probation officer. In Appendix E of the report, each of those individuals is identified for each program for each question. We do have availability for 21 different certification or training courses, or even licensure programs. That's just names a few of them there, but Appendix D of the report lists out all 21. Between September 2023 and December 2024, the youth earned 209 certificates, 24 youth completed a training program, and 13 youth were employed or had an internship in the community at discharge. And the reason why I'm including data from September 23 is because that's when our data tracking ability on this question became available. Okay. And you may ask, well, if so many kids were able to get a certificate, why weren't more kids connected to employment or internships back in the community? So that brings us to a variety of limitations that does restrict access. So, one limitation, it's not insurmountable, but one group of limitations is eligibility. So, quite a high percentage of our population, not the majority, but a high percentage, are under the age of 16. So employment options for them are extremely limited because they haven't reached that age yet. But we do have recommended strategies for that. Some is restricted by education level. Youth may be over age and under credit. Some of the programs, vocational program, do require a youth to be age 18 or to have graduated high school or have a GED. And again, we have quite a large population of youth who may be over age for their grade level and under credit. So that becomes a limitation, but it's not insurmountable. Some of the youth, their behavior may be in the way, but that is just a matter of time. They're in the treatment program to address whatever behavioral issues that they have. And through treatment progress, then they become ready. They've demonstrated their readiness to engage in vocational programming. We're looking for internships, participating in that kind of programming within the program or in the community. And then lastly, you have a program location. We have 9 different residential programs, 4 different residential types. So depending on the type of program an individual's in, they may have more access to vocational opportunities because there's space there and there's equipment there to be able to provide that. In another location, they may not have that, or the length of stay is only 2 to 4 weeks, and so they just don't have the time to benefit from that. And then other areas of restriction or challenge are, having enough funding available. Even though we have 21 options we can offer, we only had for this year or 2024 only had about $20,000 that we were able to invest in that. So what we did was really focus on those certification programs that kids could earn in the classroom that had the lowest per pupil cost. So we could provide as many kids at least one certificate before they left. I spoke about the issue of space and time. In terms of security, some of our facilities are locked, our hardware locked, but we have built systems where a child, based on their treatment goals, can enter the community if they have a reintegration mentor to participate in school, into internships, jobs, and we do have children in that position to do that. But again, in Hartford and Bridgeport, we're not able to do that because we don't have reintegration mentors. And when it comes to support, again, what I'm speaking about is that year-long support post-discharge that they receive from those mentors. Okay. So the next 2 slides are the series of opportunities that we've identified to expand access. Really, a lot of it is consistent based on funding that we're hoping that waiver was going to pay for. In the report, it does identify what the associated costs are, but ideally we'd like to provide those reintegration mentors and family support specialists in Hartford and Bridgeport. We would offer more industry recognized credentials if we could. There's certainly not a lack of will or interest. We do plan for a strategy of implementing exploratory career programming for those kids who are under age of 16. And who are just not eligible yet, or for the youth who are over 16 and just under credit. We can expand in-program internships where the youth are focusing on their soft skills, work ethic, experience, and resume building. We do that now. in terms of those skills and those milestones. But in terms of having in programming internships, that's predicated on money. And, we're able to fund out quite a bit of it, but we can always provide more opportunities if we could. We have a strong collaboration with the DCF JJE unit, who've been great to work with to help transition the kids back to their home districts, and are working with us on providing vocational opportunities to them as well. We've have a few youth who are involved in the Justice Education Center's Career Pathways programs, benefiting from their programs in the community at the technical high schools after school hours. We are building up a system of supported employment where basically we would pay for the stipend for the child to work with the employer, say for 3 months. The employer is able to onboard that youth. The youth is able to demonstrate that they're responsible, have the skills necessary to work the job, and then they can fully employ the youth afterwards. So we'd like to be able to expand that effort. We're working with the Department of Labor and continuously trying to connect with the Workforce Development Boards to try to build out that avenue for engagement. And then obviously, we're working with and continue to try to connect with other opportunities in the state through other youth focused initiatives, whether they be employment or vocational readiness minded. And so in terms of concrete strategies around vocational employment support, we're looking at 100 youth receiving program internships. We would like to be able to provide another 210 youth industry recognized credentials. We'd like to be able to provide augmented virtual reality technology to our hardware secure programs. We do have that option in our program in Hamden, but we don't have it in Bridgeport, Hartford, or in Mansfield at the girls program in Journey House. And then again, reinforcing that need for the reintegration mentors and the family support specialists. And we do have staff assigned to work with DOL and the Workforce Development Boards and DCF and the Connecticut Technical and Education Career System. So essentially, this is mapping out those strategies and the costs that we've assigned to each of them to be able to achieve those strategies and open up as much access and possibility for each of the youth. So that's outlined on this page and the following page. We put resources that we have in place, whether it be staff or the funding that we do have available, but we could obviously do a lot more for a lot more kids and families if we have those additional resources. So, any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Yes.
This actually isn't a question. It's just to kind of reinforce what CSSD has been doing. As some of you may know, ACES has education programs in 3 of your programs. And I have to say, these vocational opportunities, the technical opportunities beyond the academic classroom has been a game changer for so many of our kids. We have anything from simulators, big tractor trailer simulators through CNC classes, woodworking, and the kids are buying into it. And a lot of the times the kids will end up having these courses at like 5 o'clock in the evening, and they can't wait to like complete their dinner as fast as possible because they want to get into class. So I just wanted to reinforce what you said, Kathy, because we're doing it and the kids absolutely love it. The bigger issue though, beyond, is when our kids do leave, and I know that you guys in the back see this all the time from JJEU, is that when our kids leave and say they're considered a junior, the CT Tech schools won't take them. So the more we have the opportunity to get the kids certified, to do potential dual enrollment in trade schools, if they're right there about to graduate, we'll do our work and we do our job, and we do a lot of credit recovery again with JJEU. Michael McDonald is like our best friend now because we do credit recovery after school. The kids, the team, we do everything in our power to get our kids to graduate, often pushing to get them to graduate when they're with us, to be able to give them these tech courses is just life changing for most kids who don't have any interest, at least post high school, to go straight into college. They may do it 10 years later, but their best bet in having a successful career, not job, is to be able to get into a trade school, potentially military after they leave us. But these VOC opportunities have been huge.
Thanks, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Undersecretary Karpowitz.
Thanks, Director. Very helpful presentation. I think my broadest question is maybe you can share out a little bit, very similar to what we want to be able to do to support our colleagues at the DOC and at Manson. And that is to give us either today or going forward sightlines, taking a step back, sightlines into which you open up a little bit of here, into where these youths are a year later.
Yep.
And I maybe have a particular couple of questions here, but some of your slides here that you share, maybe you can just begin there and sort of draw that out with us. And maybe it connects to some of the work, if it does, that Ms. Montanez is involved in here and with all of you on this broader question of connection and disconnection. And so do we have a metric, if you will, it's a fancy word for it, but a sense of, are they reconnected? Are they connected in that future? And that could be here, whether it's in employment, whether it's in a learning environment of the sort that Lisa is mentioning. Do we have visibility there? And if not, what can we do to give it for all of us, right? Because that's really what we want, is that they're going on to something that's an improvement and they're on the right direction. So that's a really broad question, but
Yeah.
anything you can do to help us get that.
Yeah, and I mean, we can certainly put together information for next month on that. I think it's also really important to point out that the Connecticut Reentry Success Plan, right, that was submitted back in January, also outlined the quality assurance mechanism for that plan and spoke about the need for data collection, right, and building up the state's capacity to be able to track the youth, not only their success within the plan itself, but post involvement, right? Are they enrolled in higher education? Do they have a job? What's the data at DOL? What's the data at DSS? So being able to put those pieces together, I think is something that, is an investment for the state to do that takes time and money. But certainly we can bring back anecdotal information, right? And a good snapshot of where our more recent clients have been. But, not many of them are going to be much older than, say, 19 or so in the last year. But we can certainly put together some information around the population.
Thank you for that. That's great. And am I wrong to say that, just to manage our expectations here, currently we don't know?
We don't have the answers to all those questions now.
I just want us all to sort of settle on that, right? Right now, I'm partnering with the Department of Corrections to know who's come out of the correctional system, who's employed, doing well, has a job, and is paying taxes. We don't know. And I just want to elevate to your point about how we invest and where our priorities are. We just don't know. And I have so many colleagues at the DOC that would love to know. We don't know. And so we are doing a lot of work to get sightlines there. I just want to elevate that question, that when we're not looking at ourselves as agencies or programs, but we're looking at people, it's remarkable what we don't know. And I just want to keep elevating that with JPOC and with you all so that we can get sightlines. Thanks.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Madam Chair, I just want to take a minute to thank Kathy and Talia Nunez, who's here, and the rest of the residential staff in the branch. They do a great job. And, the report that went out this week that Kathy and Talia and the others worked on, doesn't happen by itself. And it's in addition to the work we do every day, right? So I just appreciate their effort and the work that they do with our kids that are in our care and our custody. In my opinion, they do a great job, and I just appreciate it. So thank you, Kathy, to you and your team.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for that contributed to all the reports that we had today. There are a lot of things that struck me between the three. Who you pointing to? Who? Oh, Martha? Oh.
Yeah, I just had a question in terms of sort of where do we go from here? Because one of the recommendations that both agencies were to report on was potential either reallocation or plans to actually fulfill the unmet needs. So I'm just wondering if we're bringing the agencies back, we could have a report on those two, because otherwise we get the reports, but I'm not sure what the next steps are.
Well, I know for the judicial branch, we did speak to it in the written report that was provided, so you do have the answers in that report.
And I think the other things are, I mean, well, the elephant in the room is money. And I don't know about you, but I'd stop watching the news, just saying. I think we have to be a little bit more creative right now. Will they be as solid as we'd like? No. But one of the things that really struck me was transportation was a big thing in all three. It was a common theme. Now, I don't know about you, but I know that the state of Connecticut last year provided bus passes for college students in Connecticut. I don't understand why we cannot connect with that same funding source and provide it available to the three different presentations that were made today. That would be my first conversation. There was another thing that struck me was there are some labor organizations that do training for a variety of different people in different grants. I know Emerge is one. There's the workplace in Bridgeport has offered to do some employment training for the kids and is offering to work with CSSD. They've talked to us earlier this week. So that's another one. I mean, we don't always have access to all the dollars, but we do have the ability to connect with different agencies and different people to try and make things happen. I guess I get sensitive because every time I turn around, everybody looks at me and says, money, 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 money. But we're pretty smart. And I think that we can start these conversations in some of the areas right away and then move on to how we can connect with more dollars later. Let's not let the disconnection going on in Washington affect our disconnection up here. We got to look a little deeper and a little different, but we can do it. And because I know all of you have done it before. I know it's hard. And it's like a lot of times everybody says, we are always doing everything for nothing, but that's not true. We do a lot, but we get a lot out of it because we provide a different direction for people. So sometimes we're not going to get the dollars, but we'll get there and it will persevere. So by next week, hopefully we will have a report from some of the agencies that have already talked about making connections with our kids in JJPOC and trying to get them those connections. And does anybody know who does stuffed shrimp? Okay, let me know. Okay. Because I'm getting them stuffed shrimp, and it's on my dime. I thought that was the cutest thing. I appreciate everything that everybody's done today and talk about it. I hope the tone that I'm seeing and hearing is different because of what we experienced at the last meeting. And I hope we can feel the necessity of us collaborating and talking with each other about what we can do. So we will have hopefully a conversation with at least the Department of Transportation. I know Garrett is going to love that phone call. But I think there are some options that we have out there and we'll go forward with that. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your support. Thank you for Representative Nolan. You got your finger right there at the button because you're ready to say. Representative Nolan, would you like something?
Well, since you give me the opportunity.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that.
No, I wanted to thank you in regards to some things that cost money in youth. Because when we worry about the cost, we really affect our youth. And some things cost a lot, but our youth are worth a lot. And I just wanted to say, no matter what the cost, I think we should involve that in anything we display before our committee, because people need to know that we need this for our youth, and I think it's important, and cost shouldn't always be the factor. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, and have have a good evening and go, let's see, UConn? They're still in